Hey, and welcome to VFX Tutors. I'm Josh, and in this tutorial we're going to be continuing with our VFX core skills for beginners. In our previous tutorials we've done a lot of prep work to get to this stage. We've done all our sort of transcoding, image ingesting, our photogrammetry, HDRIs, and all the other stuff, and layout and match move. And we've done so much prep stuff, we're getting onto the point where now we're going to start to do a bit more creative stuff. So in this one we're going to be doing the modeling. And it's a very simple model. It's not going to be anything too complicated. Like I say, you can do it as complicated as you want, but this is just for beginners stuff. So we're going to do this model probably quite quickly, but there are some small guidelines that we kind of want to stick to, because we're going to be modeling this for subdivision. And that kind of means that we're going to be doing it because we want to do a sculpt afterwards. And the reason why we need to keep an eye on our sort of topology is if we have quite long, large rectangles and start to go away from the squares, the subdivision doesn't work as nicely as we would like it to. Subdivision works best when it's got a uniform sort of pattern, so squares basically. So it can be subdivided into two triangles and therefore and subdivisions over and over. And that's how you get really nice high subdivided meshes in ZBrush, so you can get some nice sculpts. That being said, you can still put them in there with not great topology and it will still do something, but we'll make two versions and I'll show you the difference between it when we're in ZBrush. But yeah, it was not going to be too complicated, so we're going to just start with the modeling. So if you enjoyed this tutorials so far, just hit that like button and subscribe. Every little like and sub helps, even comments and stuff like that. Everyone seems very positive and it's great. I'm really glad that you're enjoying this series. So I'm going to stop going on now. We're going to start with the modeling. So enjoy. So I use Maya, and you can use any sort of a 3D software package. You can use 3ds Max, Blender, Cinema 4D, and multiple other ones. But I use Maya because it's just what I've used for a long time. Did used to use 3ds Max before, but most companies use Maya as a sort of standalone platform for their pipelines, so it's good to know Maya. Anyway, so in this one we're going to do some modeling. So generally the key to modeling is reference, always reference. And for reference we're going to use this, and this will be in your downloads. I'll give that to you. But because this is going to be a very quick modeling tutorial, we're not going to model every small piece. We just want to get going. We're going to use this as a basic guideline. We're not going to model every small bit, but we're going to use this as a guide. But generally when you're modeling, you want to keep as close to your reference as possible. So as much as we're not going to do it and we're kind of breaking the sort of rule, not the rules, but like if you want something to look real, you stick as close as you can to the reference, and the closer you get to it, the more real it will be. But that takes time, and it also takes a lot of practice. And as we're doing this for beginners, we're just going to keep it simple by just using this basic sort of shape as our reference. And the further you progress into your modeling and texturing, you'll be able to match these sort of objects really easily. But when you're starting off, it can be very frustrating to match it perfectly. So we just want to get going first. So you've got a pass to just kind of almost do what you want, but keep it in the guidelines of the reference. So I'm going to be using this, and I've got my measurements from here, and you've got those from the previous ones, and it's 2 centimeters thick. So the first thing that I'm going to do, I'm just going to start off with making a cube. I'm going to select my cube at the top left and poly modeling. I'm going to go to my attributes editor, and I go to polycube, and I'm going to put 2 centimeters in for the thickness, and for the height I'm going to use 21, and the width is 15. So this here is effectively the width of our front piece. So we're going to use that, and we're just going to block this all out with this now. So I'm just going to block it all out with that. So we can imagine that we're just going to call this front. Don't worry about proper naming for now, which is just, we're going to block it out. The best way to get good models is by just blocking it out first. So we're just going to get the basic shape. So we know that's the front. And if I Control D and duplicate that, it will change it to front one. But then I can't change it, but I can change the original. So I'm going to change my width to, what was it? It was 15. Change this to 18. So now that's the sides. I'm just going to rotate this 90 degrees. I'm just going to pull this down. And you could probably type in -10, and that should give you a very accurate translation. But when we're doing stuff like this, you don't necessarily want it because it's man-made, right? So the chances are it's probably not perfect. So I'm just going to Control D and duplicate that. And you can see we're starting to build up this sort of very rough bird box. And it's quite... pokes out quite a bit, but I think that should be fine. See what it looks like that. No, I don't think that's right. I think that looks better like that. And then we can do the same for Control D. I'm just going to rotate that 90 degrees. And this is going to be the bottom. So I want to tuck this in around there. And obviously this overlap is completely wrong. So you can either scale it until it meets in. See, if you can't see, you can go to shading and wireframe on shaded. And you can see when it pops in like that. Or you can hold right click and select face. And you can just drag it in until it meets. And I'm just doing this by eye now because we don't want it absolutely perfect because that just looked too mathematically correct. So it doesn't matter, as long as it's not overlapping, it should be fine. So we're just blocking it out at the moment because some of this stuff we can duplicate. Cool. So it's going to be a very simple model. And what we can do is, if we go back to our reference, it sort of peaks over the top and there's that back bit. So I can actually just duplicate this one now, the front. And I just scale it up a bit to sort of match some sort of overhang. Like I say, we're going to be quite rough with following the reference because I don't want, because if we were going to follow it perfectly, this could be a very, very long tutorial. I don't really want to. I've got loads of tutorials on modeling and some of them go on for a couple of hours and not many people watch them. But if you're interested in wanting to know more modeling, have a look at the chainsaw tutorials. So I'm just going to right click and select vertex. I'm just going to pull this up. And I'm just going to guesstimate this angle. I'm going to go with that. So I can either do the same to this one, or I can just delete that and Control D and duplicate that over. Because we're going to duplicate this again anyway once we've done the UVs. So now I'm just going to Control D and duplicate the bottom. And now I'm just going to rotate this down. And every time I scale this, I'm not scaling it uniformly. So if you scale it from the middle, you're going to change the thickness. So I'm just scaling it from the X and Y. And it doesn't matter if it doesn't fully fit, because we kind of actually want that as well. Because imagine it's handmade. You don't want it too perfect. Cool, so you can either go to your toolkit and select faces here as well. So I'm just going to pull that out for a slight overlap. Then I'm just going to line it up there. Then obviously we've got this bit here which we need to fix. But first of all, I'm just going to pull this out. In fact, I'm going to select this one now. And it should automatically select the faces for you as you switch over. I'm just going to pull this up so it matches the overlap now. So now we can sort of see where we're going to go with this one. Cool, so now we've got that fitting, but we've got some bits geometry going through it. Obviously that's not realistic. We're going to go as close within time with what time we have to get this following the ref. But only because I don't want to just do another hugely long tutorial on modeling. Because I've got loads already. And this is just going to be basic box modeling. It's fairly simple. We're almost there. With the blocking stage, that is. So we can just look around, check all these edges. Oh, check the faces, sorry. Oh, so we're pretty much, we've blocked it out basically. So on my other one, we got this hole. So she's just going to, so they're all called front now, but let's not worry about that. I'm just going to turn that grid off. And I know that because we're modeling this all in a relatively correct sizing, so the scale should be pretty good. But we'll still check it against the footage as well. So now we want to make this hole. And I'm not going to do all this sort of detail here. You're more than welcome to spend more time doing this, but I'm just going to make a basic hole. And the simplest way to do this is make a cylinder. Just going to rotate it 90 degrees. And first of all, I'm just going to place it. And let's just check it's gone. Let's turn our X-ray on so we can see if it's gone all the way through. Yep. So I'm going to reduce the poly count on this as well, so it has less subdivisions in the axis. But I do want to make sure that I've at least got one going in the X and one going in the Y equally, so I can because basically you can just like make edges and stuff like that and do it that way if you want. We're going to use a Boolean, and Booleans are absolutely fine as long as you clean them up afterwards. When you do Booleans like this, so when you want to select the thing you want to make a hole in first, then you select the thing you want to basically the shape you want out. You go to mesh, Boolean, and difference. And this is where Booleans go very wrong, is when people leave it like this. You can't leave the Boolean like this because this is an absolute mess. And if we smooth that now, although we haven't got any subdivisions there, we can see the creasing and all that sort of stuff. It just makes, it's not good practice at all. So the simplest way to do this is I'm going to select this edge and that edge and delete them. And gonna start mapping out. Probably be easier if I press this and press Control 1. I'm going to delete this edge and that edge. And remember when I said we're modeling this with subdivisions, so we've got to try and think of this, how can we actually make this be subdivided equally as well? So I'm going to go to my modeling toolkit, select my multi-cut, and hold Control and left click. Then I'm going to join these up. Did I just select one? It looks like we have got, this is the problems with Boolean, because we've got something in here that we can't quite see. If you right click and go vertex face, usually reveals some dodgy stuff. It looks like we've got some dodgy geo here, so I'm just going to select this, delete it, delete the back. So now I'm going to select that edge loop, Control E, press R, and scale it out from there. So now we've got this nice edge loop here. So now if you press 3, it's all looking normal because we haven't done the edges. Cool. So I'm now also going to figure out how I want to make this in an equal amount. So I don't really, because I'm going to subdivide this, I don't really want to be going into corners. So first of all, I am going to just do these edges. But I'm just going to select these vertices, press R, scale them down so they're flat, press W, hold V to snap, and I'm going to snap them so they're equally there. So I'm just going to select this edge, bridge to there, press G to repeat command, select these edges. So when I say, even though these are kind of not equal, they could be a lot worse, like this. Oh no. Like that. We don't really want that. But we almost don't really even want that going into the corner. So I'm just going to delete that edge. And let's multi-cut here. And multi-cut here. Cool. So we have got a pole here, which is fine because it's in the center of the geometry. But all we're going to do is just sort of make this hole. And you might be thinking, oh, there's a lot of extra geometry, but when we smooth that out, you'll notice the difference. So I'm just going to add these ones in. Make sure we add one down here. Let's go to our edges. Bridge. Press G to repeat command. Obviously we've got this, so we can select the edge there, and if it's easier we can just go fill hole. Then we can reroute the edges by using the multi-cut. See, this is not great here, so we need to build this up. And this is only simple modeling basically. But we're gonna bring these up so they're a little bit more even. What I will do is make another edge loop round here. So now these should hopefully subdivide. So I can actually select this and pull that down so it's a little bit nicer. It's just so it subdivides a little bit nicer. And now we've got our hole. So now what we want to do, we want to duplicate this to the other side. So it can be as easy as Control D and rotate 180 degrees in the Y. If I just Control 1 on that to isolate it. I'm going to double select this edge loop and delete it all. and select this edge loop by double clicking. If I press Control 1 now and select this one with Control Shift, then Control 1 to hide the rest. So now what I can do is select Mesh, Combine, go to my vertex, my modeling toolkit, then where are we? We want target weld. Click and drag your vertices to match, and they should weld together. So out of all of the parts of this model, this is probably the most complicated part, so it should be relatively easy. And you don't have to sit and watch all the way through. I'm sure if you've done modeling before, you can probably just smash this out quite quickly. But I've definitely missed some there, so I'm just going to select all my vertices, go to Edit Mesh and Merge. So I'm going to press 3 to check. And we've got some that haven't merged here. Ooh. Go away in Explorer. Because they're further out the threshold, I can use my target weld. So if I press 3 now, some of them didn't weld at the bottom, it doesn't matter. So with 3 let's just check these vertices. It doesn't seem like it's smoothing straight. May have accidentally. Let's try and get this an even spacing. So we just need to tighten up these edges and it should all be fine. So there's no holes. It's not a complex model, but it's your first model if this is your... So what I will do is actually scale that. And make sure these are flat on the side because I think they're slightly not. Cool, so we've now made that hole. And pretty much the rest of it is going to be fairly similar. So a lot of it's actually already done, so what we will do, for now, we'll just make some subdivisions in this so it can be subdivided evenly. So it's not perfect, but you can spend more time on it. And we only really need to focus on one of these sides because we will duplicate it in the UV stage. So let's try and even those out. And we've got this one on the bottom. And you can obviously spend more time getting this more even. I just don't want to spend too much of time, so you probably end up getting bored. But I don't want to do it too fast, that it's like a time lapse. I do feel those time lapse sort of tutorials are a bit pointless. Cool, so we've modeled our basic shape. And what I want to do some extra little bits as well. So I'm gonna make this. In the previous one I had this little perch thing so they could stand on, just to give it a little bit of something different. So it wasn't just a flat front. Just turn my wireframe shading off now. I'm just going to scale this and kind of do this by eye of what looks kind of alright. Just turn the wireframe shade back on because I can't quite see. And I definitely don't need that many subdivisions. So I'm just going to mostly do this by eye. I know we should always stick to the reference. This isn't in the reference, but it's fine. You've got a free pass to kind of do what you want with this because you're just learning. So cool. So one of our main problems that we have now is that we have triangles on this thing, and we definitely don't want that. So what we can do is just go to our faces. Let's just select all our faces and deselect the middle ones. I'm going to select my edge and Control E to extrude. Press R, scale that in. Then I'm going to hold Shift, right click, and fill hole. Then I'm going to go to my modeling toolkit, multi-cut. Then just select the edges and finish off the edge loops. Cool. Now you can see that we've all got squares, and if you want, you can go to the relax tool. It's probably quite large. And you can relax these edges so it kind of fits in a bit better. Cool. So that's a little bit better. It's not amazing. So we'll just do the same thing for the other side. Control E, press R to scale in. And we're not really going to see the side, so it doesn't matter so much, but we should still do it as a good practice. Cool. Not so worried about that side. Cool, so we've done our little perch. And what else have we got to do? We've got some screws that we need to do up here as well. And probably some nails. So we're almost done. We'll make the nails because the nails should be pretty easy and we can just reuse this. So for Control D. And I'm just going to make a generic small nail. Something that pokes out. And yeah, it's not going to be anything complicated. So just going to make an edge there. Make another edge. What I want to do is just select all these. Just going to scale that down. Select these vertices that goes up to the top, and obviously that's quite a thin nail, so we will just select these edges. Not that you're going to see it anyway, but ooh. So you're thinking, I want to thickness that, make that thicker, but I don't want to do that. So there's a really useful tool. If you hold Shift, so if you select the edges, not the edges, the faces, hold Shift and right click, you have Transform Component. This is really useful because that means that you can scale things, like make them fatter basically. Yeah, it just makes things a lot easier. So I'm not too worried about making a point on it because it should effectively not be seen anyway. So I will just delete the history and freeze the transforms and that. we can imagine these are fairly small nails, like little tacks or something. So what I will do first, I will set this up to be subdivided, because we haven't done it on the other one yet. So I usually leave it till last, but because we're going to duplicate this loads, I want to make sure that I don't have to do this on every single one. So I'm just going to select my edges. Just going to bevel them, stick a segment on there. Make it a little bit tighter, so when it does, get smoothed, it does smooth out, but keep pressing F1. I still need to, not so much in here, because I actually don't care about the subdivision there, because no one's going to see it. But yeah, you're more than welcome to keep it as close as possible. So the thing is, we've done one nail. You can sort of scale it up till it sort of looks right. We want to, because we're going to do multiple of these, we want to UV it first. So I'm going to do one. Then I'm going to do the screw now. So we're going to have a screw as well at the top. So the simplest way for us to make a screw is in a very similar way. So I'm just going to call this nail. And I'll call this perch. I'm just going to select all this. And just delete all the history. And then just group that. Call that bird box, just so we know it's all there. Because we still need to harden these edges so they don't, when it does get subdivided, it doesn't break. So yeah, we're going to do this screw now. So you still want to try and keep to as close to reference, because like I say, reference for realism, reference is the key, basically. And that's what's going to make your stuff look real and much better than everyone else's. I'm not going to particularly be so strict on reference on this one, because it's a bird box, it's your beginner one, and I don't want to be spending... You probably don't want to be spending ages, just like... It's more just have a bit more fun as well. Like, be a bit creative about what you want to do. And just try things out. Yeah, so don't worry so much about it. So I'm going to make this screw, and I haven't got any reference up for it, but I've modeled so many screws in my life. We can pretty much do it from memory. So I actually want probably about 12 subdivisions on here. And now what I want to do is create a cube. And there are loads of ways you can do this. This is not the set way. This is the easiest way for me. So basically this part here is going to be the inside. And what we want to do is sort of make it logical to the screw. So I'm actually going to Control D, duplicate that and rotate that round, just for a reference. So you can sort of see what we're going to do here. We're going to use this as a base. So I'm going to multi-cut here, and just multi-cut here. Select my edge loop, press W, hold V, and then I'm just going to snap it to this vertex. I'm going to do the same here and snap this to that vertex. Select my faces, Control E. I could snap that to there. Control E. And snap that to there. So we've got like almost our crosshead here, but we got a lot of stuff that might cause a mess. So the reason why I've picked 12 is so I can actually figure out how I can plan these edge loops. Because whenever you do a bevel, you have to make sure that you give every edge a home, basically. So I'm planning on, we can have edge loops going through the center of these, and that will go to there. This will go to there. And we should all be good with finding everything a home. Let's just double check that. Yeah, let's put it on 12. And what I'm going to do is select all these faces. Make sure you only select the middle ones. Select the edge and hold shift and fill hole. It's because I want to decide where these edges go. I don't want it to decide for me. Cool. So now pull this out, delete this geo that I've left in there. And obviously this is not the shape of a screw. So I'm going to select my vertices. I'm just going to extrude that in. And you can see that now we've got the shape of almost a point of a screw. Then I'm just going to push this all the way in, leaving a bit of an overlap. I'm going to select my cylinder, then my cross, then go to modeling, mesh, boolean, and difference. So now you can see that it's chopped out our shape, but it's also made this awful geometry as well. So I'm going to delete those edges. And then I'm going to start finding all these parts homes for their edges. So first of all, I'm going to start with the cross section. So I'm going to multi-cut, control, left click. Ooh. So that's probably going to make some dodgy geometry. So I'm just going to delete that. And I'm just going to make some edge loops in here. So now I can select this edge and that edge, bridge, and just select the edges and vice versa. And this is surprisingly turning into quite a long tutorial. Let's try. I don't want it to go any longer than an hour. Who knows, by this point you might have already made your own bird boxes. So now we've got this sort of problem here where we've got these edges here. And if we bridge that, we've now got a triangle. So what we can do is, probably should have doubled this, to be honest. Just so we can add the extra edge loop in. And we can manually do that, but I will favor making a new one and adding that extra edge loop in, because it's a lot easier. Usually I do duplicate my cylinder before actually editing it, so what I will do is just hold V. I know people probably go, oh, there's much easier ways, but there probably are. This is just, everyone has their own way. I'm probably, the way I'm doing it right now is, it always goes wrong when you try to record something, so. So basically I want 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19 edges, I believe. I think I might have just miscounted that horrendously. But let's go to... So I need 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. Cool. So yeah, now my math is awful. Cool, so now we're in a better place with the correct edge loops, so just gonna delete all that. So faces. Ooh. Sometimes it's easier to use the modeling toolkit and just select stuff there. So I'm just gonna select both these and combine them. Select my mesh and target weld. And I'm just going to marry these edges up. We also need to delete that geo that we made earlier. So let's delete this. Then we can select the edge. I can bridge it. You should be able to select multiple edges. Sometimes there's weird stuff, so I kind of always like to do. See, it's selected stuff in the background, which is kind of annoying. So I'm just going to control 1 on that to isolate it. And if you do stuff like, I know it takes longer to do things a bit manually one by one, but it's at least you know it's done correctly and there's not anything weird happening. Cool, so we finally got there. We've made our screw. Obviously, it doesn't look like this. We need to push this back. And we're not going to see this part anyway, but just out of sanity's sake, we can just select that, press E, and push that in like that. And we're not going to see this, so it doesn't matter if it's a bit thick or a bit thin. But we do need to fill that hole. Control E. And let's multi-cut and finish off these edge loops. So hopefully, this is taking quite a long time. Didn't realize it took so long, but yeah, now we've got this basic bolt, screw, sorry. We still need to make sure, because if we smooth that now, it's going to look awful. So what we can do is just delete the history off it. We'll call this screw. And what I'll do, I'll duplicate these when we do the UV stage, because I don't want to duplicate them, then we're still going to have to UV them. But what we'll do, I'm just going to set all this up so we can subdivide it nicely. And in the next stage, when we UV these bits, we'll then duplicate it across, because there's no point doing it before, because we still have to duplicate it. But cool, so I'm going to do one thing at a time, and it's fairly simple. All I'm going to do is just select all the edges, and I'm just going to bevel it. And this allows us to keep our sharp corners. So make sure you've got all the edges. And then bevel. And let's take extra segment so it's it keeps it in quads. So you can see here that when we smooth it, these edges stretch quite a lot. But this is why we're going to do this for subdivision. So when we do UV it, we'll also add another subdivision layer onto it, so it gives it supporting edges. You can add those supporting edges in like that if you want, but so if I press 3, you can see it stretches out to here. So now if I add an edge roughly in the same place, edge loop, sorry. So now if I press 3, you see it's massively reduced it. But we're still going to subdivide this anyway, so don't worry too much about that. So we'll actually undo that. Cool. So if I press 3, and we'll do the subdividing at, we'll do the subdivision after the UVing as well. Cool, so I'm just going to go through and do all these panels and bevel them. And you don't have to wait for me to do this. You could probably have done this if you've done modeling before. Probably take you no time at all. Probably want to make sure it's the same, reasonably the same amount. So this one, make sure, get all these edges. So I don't want to fast forward through this because you might miss something. So I'm just going to do the same again, bevel. Is it 0.1, 2 segments. So I have to press 3. It's got a lot more. You can see how with this one, because it's effectively got more subdivisions on it, the stretching doesn't happen as much. So we kind of effectively, what we'll end up doing is something similar to this to the other panels after UVing, because it's easier to UV like this. You don't want to be doing your subdivision before UVing because it will just be quite heavy. So you don't have to wait for me to do all these, you can just go ahead, but I'm just going to do the same thing over. Ooh, make sure you've got all the edges, otherwise you'll have bad bevels. Sometimes easier just to type it in. It's always good just to smooth it and double check you've not missed one. So we've done top, bottom, front. So we just need to do the other side. And we don't actually need to do the other side. We can just Control D, duplicate it. Because we're going to duplicate it again when we UV it. So don't worry about that. Oop. Because we don't want to UV it twice, so naturally we're going to UV it once, then duplicate it twice after. So just select all these edges. Double check I got them all. Bevel, 2 segments, 0.1. And let's do the screw. I think we did this, didn't we? Yeah, we've already done that. We've not done the perch. So this one's pretty simple. And we don't want it the same bevel because it's probably slightly different wood. But what we will do is add some extra subdivisions in here. I know they're not squares, but I don't want to do too many because we're not going to add too much detail on this. But it's better than not having any. But you can obviously do that a little bit better than I've done. I've just rushed that. You can see with more supporting edges, less stretching happens. So now we've just got this screw. So let's just do these edges first. So we're not going to see a huge amount of this screw, but we kind of still want to at least make sure it subdivides correctly at least. So press 3, it's going to do this weird thing here. Cool. So, oh, have to get right in there. Let's press 3 and see what it looks like. I'm not actually that bothered about the inside. Actually, no, I probably should do. Edges. We can add supporting edges in here, but it's such a small piece. We probably missed an edge. So we got 2 segments here. It's going to make some pretty not particularly nice geo there, I must admit. It's probably not a great place to do that, but for what we've missed those edges. Sorry, I missed those edges there as well. Sorry. And that one. Let's double check we got all of them. Yeah. Let's change that to 2, 0.1. It's probably a bit too tight. Let's change to 0.3. And what I also want to do is kind of add a edge loop in there as well, because I've got a feeling when I smooth this, it's not going to look so pretty there. Yeah, that's what I thought. So we do need to fix that. We might not even need to smooth this, but let's undo that. So we need to fix this. Let's try and be. So it's not going to work. So I don't particularly want to so we could effectively, to fix that, we could then bevel all these edges, but then that's going to make kinks. It will give us correct edge flow. So if we do that now, we can bring this down. Sorry, I just sneezed. And we sort of see we've got some screw here, but you now see we've got some really horrible stuff here. So what I will do is create another cylinder. God, spending a long time on the screw. Just gonna rotate it 90 degrees, scale it down. And we probably will barely even see it. So I'm just using this as a guide. So we want to make sure that we've got, I can't remember, I think it was 16. So we need to make sure we've got at least 2 in between each one. So let's count these edges actually so we're correct. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24. Cool, so it's 24 edges we need to distribute, and we were right. So now all I'm going to do is slide this back so it's on top. But I don't, just need it close, I think. And I'm not too worried about, in fact I will pull this back. Oh, no, making a little bit of a mess now, sorry. Cool, so we know that one's in the right place and those ones on the side of the right place. So I'm just going to select my vertices here, hold V, and I'm just going to snap it in the X and Y axis. So I'm not snapping it in anywhere else. I'm just making it so it still gets the round profile. Because you can do this by eye, and I can almost guarantee you'll probably get it wrong. But I know this is a really manual way to do it, but it's just how I prefer. I like doing stuff a lot more manually. I'm sure there's probably a much cleverer way to do this, but I always find that even though this does take a little bit more time, it always works. And it just means your stuff's going to subdivide nicely. And you can take advantage of beveling stuff. And if I'm honest, I'm not really too bothered about the stuff that I don't see. But if you want to fix all the other bits, just do the same down there. But to me, I'm not really that fussed. I'm not going to see it. And we've got some really rough looking. It's not the prettiest looking screw, but we're only going to see it for a little bit. Probably won't even see it. So I know it's not the best, but it's going to be such a tiny piece to our actual model, we probably won't notice it. It's probably quite highly likely that we won't see the screw at all. So I'm just going to pull this up a bit higher because that's going to be sunk in the wood, remember, so. Nope, not going to do that, just going to delete the history. Turn my X-ray off and press on. Cool, so if we now select all this and press 3, we can look around and everything's subdividing nicely. So our next step would be to just UV this, then we'll distribute the rest and set it up for more subdivision. So I know it's been quite a long tutorial on just like making a bird box. I don't know how I can make that. Probably can make it quicker in a speed run, but I don't want to do that. You'll just get more out of it, and we've probably just come in just under an hour, which is still quite long, but the next ones won't be as long. Cool, so we've made pretty much our basic bird box. It's all to the right scale, and in the next one we'll UV it and subdivide it more, make a high poly mesh. So if you've enjoyed this tutorial and you've enjoyed it and you've learned something, hit that like button and subscribe for more like this.